Welcome, CCAP candidates. I am Mitzi Hubbard, the CCAP Program Administrator with the National Community Action Partnership. Thank you for participating in today's session, CCAP Exam Guidance, presented by Jim Lepresti. If you encounter any technical difficulty, please reach out to me using the chat box, and I will help troubleshoot. A few more technical notes before we get started. We are recording today's session for your reference. It will be placed on the CCAP webpage under the Webinars tab. Please submit your questions and comments using the chat function. Your questions may be answered at the end of each topic of discussion or at the end of today's session. Also, there will be CCAP exam guidance handout emailed directly to you. And just a reminder to make sure your audio is muted at all times. Now, I present to you Jim Lepresti. Thank you so much for attending today's session.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session on the CCAP exam. We are scheduled from now for 1 full hour. We might not need to take that whole time, but I hope you all have it available in case we do. I am the exam consultant for the partnership for the CCAP program, and after the time that you receive notification that you have qualified to take the CCAP exam through the day of the exam on June 15th, I will be your contact person for matters concerning the exam. Then after June 15th, that goes back to Mitzi. So that's to say, I will be your contact person as the exam consultant from the time after which you get notice about qualifying for the exam until the time when the exam is finished. Today, we're going to walk through some things about the CCAP exam, and during the course of that, I'll stop at certain points to take a look at the chat window to see if there are any questions that you might have. And I will try to answer them. I may, on that occasion, depending on the question, may ask you to unmute and then be in dialogue with me if it's necessary. And then after that, to go back to being muted. But we want to make sure to make this a comfortable experience for everyone attending, that we don't have random noise in the background as a distraction for persons trying to focus on what's being covered in this presentation. So welcome. The CCAP exam given on June 15th, 2022. Let's talk about the exam in general. Candidates are eligible to take the examination when you've accumulated up to 700 points on the CDF and the ESP combined. I think you will understand it, and it's administered in June each year. Now, it's composed of questions that have been written and tested by community action leaders in the field. That's important. These questions have been generated by your colleagues and have gone through a process of being tested by other colleagues to see their appropriateness and the quality of the questions and the significance of them. They're mostly objective, meaning questions in the form of multiple choice or true and false. The most frequent format is a matching question. Match a potential question to a menu of options of what the right choice might be. Now, some of them are essays in which the candidate is expected to make management and leadership skills decisions and choices in response to a particular challenge. The point is, it is more based on the application of knowledge than the memorization of facts. Now, in some sense, anything about community action history will have the need to understand dates and such things or periods in the history of community action. The certification exam is given in 2 separate sections, and the actual time sitting down to take the exam at your computer lasts up to 4 hours and 15 minutes, those 2 sessions put together. but we'll look in a little bit more detail into that a little bit later. It's administered using the Moodle Cloud program, which is hosted on the Partnerships Community Action Academy. And I'll get more into how you access that. Some of you may be experienced with it. Others may be totally new to it. It's okay. Being totally new to it, you'll be walked through how to access it. Now, candidates are required to practice the exam on the computer that they will be using on the exam day itself. That is important, and we'll get to the details of where that practice exam is. It's not the actual exam, and how you access it. But the reason we do that is to make sure that you use the computer that you will use on the day of the exam. This certifies your computer linked to that Moodle site. The exam is scored by the CCAP Commission late in June. It takes about 6 or 7 days for us to organize materials for the commission to meet. They look at your answers in the objective questions and make sure that there's no irregularities in how those questions perform. That's a very technical statistical process. But more important, that the questions that you write that are essay questions, we'll talk about in a moment, need to be hand scored by the commissioners in a meeting. The exam is based on the 5 sections of the body of knowledge outline that you're all very familiar with. So section 1 of the exam is objective questions that cover all 5 of those sections of the body of knowledge. Section 2 of the exam, which is you access that separately and later, is a series of essay questions that includes a group of questions that are based on the New Hope case study that will be sent to you in advance. By the way, someone already asked Daniel about if you skip a question. I will get to that. We'll get into those details, Daniel, about skipping questions. Yes, you can do that, and I'll show you how to do it. In section 2, the essay questions, New Hope case study, that will be sent to everyone after their notice of qualifications. Reminder, the exam has a 1,000-point value. The technical scoring process, and there's 700 points out of it. It's a very technical statistical process, but you can figure out basically it's like accomplishing 70% correct responses. In general, is a way to look at that. Now, the exam is accessed through virtual exam sites. That is either a Zoom meeting site or GoToMeeting function, a site rather, that they function as lobbies to the exam and lobbies to accessing the website that is hosted on Moodle. And each candidate will register for one of those virtual sites or lobbies between May 1st and 31st. The reason it's between May 1st and 31st, it will take us the month of April to make sure that all of our host proctors who proctor those virtual exam sites are appropriately trained and ready to, first of all, sign up, and then trained and ready to assist you. Someone asked, well, I'll get to your question actually right now, Christy. You said, can you clarify that last statement that you must use, not that you must use a laptop computer. If you use a laptop computer, it must be the same one, whatever computer that you use. We find that most people do use a laptop, but no, you may not use tablets or mobile devices. All of that, by the way, will be more detailed in the exam regulations, which will be sent to you. I don't want to get into too many weeds with you so we don't get confused, but there's a lot more detail in the exam regulations that will be sent to you, and I will review the fact that that will happen. That is, that regulations will be sent to you again a little bit later. When candidates log on to a site, the host proctor will ask each candidate to show the following. that there's no one else in the exam room. These are all for purposes of exam security. No one else in the room, nothing on the candidate's desk other than the computer, a handheld calculator, which we recommend. Sometimes there is the need to do some calculations, a blank notepad for your own purposes, pens and pencils, and a copy of those exam regulations, which will be sent to you, and an unmarked copy of the New Hope case description. Also, it mentions a bottle of water. Sometimes for ADA, we get requests because of persons who may be diabetic, for example, and they have special needs. Are there exceptions? So of course, we make those kinds of exceptions based upon those medical needs. During the course of the whole exam period, the candidate's cell phone must be turned off and placed out of convenient reach from the candidate's seat and within computer camera range, so that the proctor who's observing this whole process, observing you through the screen, will be able to know if you access your cell phone. You'll be asked by the chat window what that was about. Yes, by the way, this presentation is being recorded. That's a response to another chat question. Okay, let's move on. Again, all this will be in the exam regulations. Now, in preparation for the examination, a study guide is developed each year, and by requirements of the commission, it is posted by January 31st. You'll see that it's on the partnership website right now, and I'm supposing that many of you have accessed it already. The guide contains the sources that are used for all the questions on the examination and correlates to the body of knowledge outline. So if you've looked through those materials, you will have seen the actual place the person who generated that question that appears, or those questions that appear in the exam, exactly where they got them from. Again, that's posted on the website in the end of January. And many of the documents that are referred to or referenced in the study guide are included as attachments to that study guide. Now, here's what we're going to take a look at now, after that preliminary, and much what you heard in the preliminary will be repeated in the exam regulations and more. We're going to now talk about using the online exam login and navigation process. First, for the practice exam itself, we see that, and then how you access the virtual site, the process of working with a host proctor, and then we'll look specifically about what's different between how the practice exam is accessed and what's different about accessing the CCAP examination. Okay, I'm going to look in the chat window before we proceed. I think I've gotten everyone's question from Daniel, Christine, and Gregory. I think we've gotten it all. Okay. So I think I will go on to that next point. By the way, this is not a series of PDF slides, because using Zoom meeting doesn't have sufficient functionality for that purpose. This is a PDF of those slides, and this PDF document will be available to you right after this presentation. Getting ready for the online exam. Particularly now, the practice exam. The website is, there's no www in it. It's moodle.communityactionpartnership.com. Don't worry about remembering this. You will see this on the PDF, and you will see it in the exam regulations, and more often, lots of times, including links. So that's the hyperlink. Now, you enter an ID and a password to access it. This is very important information right now. The ID and password is given to you soon after you receive notice of qualifying to take the exam. That ID and password is going to be a 5-digit number. It's the same 5 digits. The ID and the password are the same thing. Not to be concerned, you will be reminded of this when you get your message. Now, if you already have logged in and set up an account on the Community Action Partnerships, Community Action Academy Moodle website, you will not have to do a new one. When the time comes to register people to access the exam, I will know that. I have an administrator's access to the Moodle website and have all those controls. I will know if you set up your own access to that website, and I will just be registering you to get access to the exam. So that also means for those of you who are new to it, notice it says you get this message that this is your first time, please create an account. Do not. I have created an account for you unless you've already done that before you get a notice about qualifying for the exam. I hope that's real clear. Okay. So when you get that, as I mentioned, a 5-digit ID is assigned to you, and that 5-digit ID is also your password, all right? Unless you previously registered on the Community Action Partnerships, Community Action Academy website. If you've correctly identified your information, you should see your name here on the top right-hand corner of the Moodle page. It's difficult to see that blueprint from a screenshot, but it's right next to it. A picture placeholder would be if you had a picture, but it's right at the very top corner of the screen. If a name other than yours shows up, log out immediately. That means you've entered the 5-code digit of another candidate and their password, and you're taking the exam for them, not you. It would not be a pleasant experience for either one of you. So please be very careful when you log in to make sure your name appears in that top right-hand corner before you proceed. If it does not, log out. And this log out process is the same every time you access the Moodle site, either for the practice exam or for the exam on June 15th. The drop-down menu appears, and you'll see next to your picture, well, if you have uploaded a picture, most haven't, and download, click on the downward arrow and see the place to log out. You do this every time you finish with a session. We recommend doing that between the 2 sessions on exam day, but you don't have to. Now, having determined that you've opened up the correct page for your exam, and if that's your page, you click on the link down here on the right-hand corner that says CCAP practice exam. If you mistakenly press on the one that says CCAP examination, it'll tell you that that does not open until the exam day itself. Then open CCAP practice exam as many times as you want so that you feel very comfortable accessing the site and maneuvering your way through the practice exam. And we're going to take a look at that in a little more detail in the next few pages. That's between April 4th, that's when it will become live, and June 11th, okay? But you are presently, all of you, waiting, unless you're a person who took the exam last year and are repeating it this year, you are waiting to get your notification as the executive skills portfolio scoring process and all the audits that follow after that are done. Definitely that should be done, by that very beginning of April. We open up then the option for accessing the practice exam when we're pretty sure that everyone has received their notification about qualification. It closes on June 11th. That's because we need to register the fact that you have actually accessed the practice exam. If I go on site and see that you haven't accessed, you'll get a message, and it's possible that the commission may deny you access if you've not accessed the practice exam. Now, of those of you who took the exam last year and are repeating it this year, we will know that. And if you accessed it last year and you're comfortable, you don't need to access it this year, but we'll know that. But we still recommend you do it anyway. No. So when you click on that pre-CCAP practice exam, this is what you'll see. It's a description page. It describes what you've just gotten to. That is to say, you've gotten the CCAP practice exam. By the way, Charlie just asked, is the scoring available for practice exam? You'll see something about that. You won't get a report on your score, no, but it'll show you something about points and ability. I'll get into that in a few moments. But it does not. It doesn't show you, quotes, what you scored, and there's a reason for that, and namely that it includes an essay question, and they have to be hand scored, so you can't get an automatic score. I hope I didn't get too far into the weeds with that. But if you have more questions about that, please feel free to ask. Now, this is what you will see. I took this picture in 2020, but it's exactly the same thing for 2022. You will see CCAP practice exam for candidates taking June 2022 exam. So you click on that link. And then when you open that page, you will see this, attempt quiz now. That's interesting because the Moodle site doesn't call anything an exam. It calls any kind of a test only a quiz. So when it says attempt quiz now, that's an exam. Okay? So here's what happens when you click on that. You will see this. And this, by the way, is exactly the same way the CCAP exam will appear, except CCAP exam's longer. This is what the question will look like. Take a look at that screenshot on the left upper hand corner of your page. You see the question number, and you'll see quotes not yet answered. I'll get to that. Points out of, this box shows you the value of the question. Now that was just arbitrary, that number that's put on the practice exam. You'll see that there's a certain number of points, and they're all 20 points, as it were, on the CCAP exam question itself. It gives you the option to flag the question. That gets back to the question that Daniel Mueller asked earlier. You can flag a question to get back to it. I'll tell you more, that it also gives you another opportunity besides that. So this is an example of a multiple choice question. Okay? Now, when you're finished with your answer, you can click either two ways to navigate the page. Click on next page to go to the next question, or you can click on a page number called quiz navigation. Now here you see it appearing on the bottom of the page. Sometime that navigation list of pages or icons or for those pages will appear on the right hand of your screen, but it'll be obvious when you see it. And that actually shows you what you have done so far. That will become clearer as we proceed. And then there's, by the way, you'll see in this that there are, if you can see on the bottom here, it says 11. That's how many questions there are on the practice exam. You don't have to answer all of them. That's up to you. But you do want to answer questions 10 and 11. Question 10 is an essay question, and it's an example of what they look like exactly on the exam itself. And this is a sample. Now here's the question. It gives you an idea of what the question might be like. And by the way, you'll see the other objective questions are all samples of what questions might look like on each area of the body of knowledge. They would look and feel like what you see. This looks and feels like what an essay question looks like on the exam. Delilah asked the question, does the practice exam have actual exam content? Or is it there mainly for us to see the format? It's actual content. It's a pretend exam that asks community action kinds of questions for you to give community action answers to test out what that experience is like. And the practice exam is always the same all the time, each year. That's to answer Jackie's question right now from Kentucky. So it's not new questions each time. The point of this is not to give you the content experience, it's to give you the process experience. So here we have a question about making some decisions. So when your board and you're the executive director or CEO of this agency has a member of the low-income community win the lottery and wants to do something to benefit the agency, and is suggesting something that might make the CEO understandably feel a little uneasy. So you're asked to write an essay question that addresses how you would respond to her request. The exam gives you a white space that basically functions just like an MS Word document, so that you just type in your answer. Now, it doesn't function with exactly the same functionality that a Word document does, but you'll see at the top of that white space a set of icons that are guides to formatting. You'll see that that includes, on the far left, a downward arrow that adds more options. So it gives you formatting options to use in responding to that essay question. But I urge you not to be concerned about that or anxious. If you use the practice exam a number of times and pull down a list of functions that you might want to add to enhance the way your page looks and feel comfortable do it, by all means do it. But when the commissioners are reading the question responses that you type in that white space, they're not looking for formatting. They are looking for correct responses. It depends on your comfort level of accessing those formatting options. Now you'll notice that the bottom underlined sentence in the blue box is a space limit. You're allowed no more than 40 typed lines in your essay. That's the maximum that the Moodle program allows in an essay question. And the essay questions are designed in a way that 40 lines should be definitely more than you would need to answer the question. Don't feel like you have the need to fill the whole box because there's a whole box to fill. Consider that you might want to do what you might want to say is the best answer. You will have the option while you are doing this to come back to that question, to flag it, to come back to it, and to continue to edit. And then when you're done, you'll see that it'll upload your last attempt. So that will indicate what is the actual attempt for, it's where the Moodle program works. So you can come back to it and work on it. You can flag it and go back to it. All right? Now, I didn't say what question 11 is. This is question 10, this essay on the practice exam. Question 11 asks you, and I'll show you what that is. I don't think, no, I don't, okay. Question 11 is going to ask you to note any difficulties you have. Did you have difficulties accessing the web page? Did you have difficulties navigating the exam? Did you have difficulties using functions? I watch the practice exams that's going along, and I look for question 11. And if I see you're having difficulty that's not answered, I will respond to that between April 4th and beginning of June. Okay. So on the last page, after you're finished, you will see on the last page of the exam, finish attempt. You will see exactly that same thing on the last page of session 1 and session 2 of the actual exam. We'll look at the difference between them, though, in a few minutes. At the end of the practice exam, like you'll see at the actual exam, on each session, click on Finish Attempt. Then when you click on that, you'll see a summary of what you did on your attempt. It will show you the answer that is saved, an answer that is saved, when you only partially answered and didn't finish it, or one that you've not yet answered. That is to say that you haven't actually answered or that you flagged. Take a look on the far left, you'll see that flag that shows you this. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see all the pages. And you'll see that number 3 is you didn't finish the answer. It has the caution thing at the bottom. Number 5, you flagged it to come back to it. So you can click back and go back to those questions that you didn't complete, go back and look at them, and redo what you've done, and make sure you're satisfied with your answers. Then once you're satisfied, it'll ask you again either to return to the attempt or submit all and finish. Return the attempt means, I'm going to do this, take me back. And if you click on submit all and finish, that means you're done. You can't return to the exam. You can't even look at it. You can on the practice exam look at it, but you can't on the actual exam. Okay. You must click on submit all and finish, or your answers will not be posted and they will be voided. I repeat that. Remember this. When you finish your attempt and it asks you, basically you say, finish attempt, it reviews it, then it asks you in a sense, are you sure? Submit, that's what it says, submit all and finish, because you can't go back. But if you don't click on that, it won't record your answers. There's one exception. And that exception is if you are kicked off the internet for any reason. If your connection is lost, either on Moodle's end or your end, it will auto-upload the answers that you have finished. Okay? That's the only exception to that. Please remember this. Okay. Here's what asks you a second time, are you sure? Once you submit, you'll no longer be able to change your answers for this attempt. Submit all and finish. You will see, that's correct, you will see a review of your answers, but you can't do anything about them. You're done, okay? And then you log out. All right. Let's take a look at the difference. Back to Jackie asked, did you say that we cannot see our score for our practice again? No, you can't, because it can't give you a score. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to scroll back up. This question, the Moodle cannot score, so it can't give you a score for the exam. The only time an essay question, we have to manually enter your score. The commissioners, after they, for example, on the actual exam, read your essays, then a score is entered, and only then can the program generate a score, okay? So let's continue where we left off. The differences. You can return, back to Amanda. If you are kicked off due to internet loss, yes, you will be able to log back in and take you back to where you were. I repeat that, Amanda. If you are kicked off due to internet loss and you've logged back on, you will get back to the exam where you are. And we have fail-safes that we can take care of in the back office. Now, the practice exam, you can return to it and do it as many times as you want, but you know you can log on to the CCAP exam only once. This is why it is so important that you enter the right ID, 5-digit code, an ID password, because if you put another candidate's name in and log in, both of you have been in an avoided situation. I hope that's well understood. Okay. The CCAP exam is actually 2 quizzes. The first one's objective, and the second one's a set of essay questions. Now, those 2 tests open up only on the day of the exam. Now, it may take a little longer for that page to open than was the case with the practice exam. It opens quickly. Just be patient. It may take a couple minutes. You must enter the objective question section first. Then there'll be a short break. Now, that break is up to you. Your proctor is watching your progress. Your proctor sees you leaving the computer. If you haven't in the chat box told your proctor, I'm done, I'm leaving, then the proctor will ask me, wait a minute, my candidate disappeared. And I will in the back end say, yes, he or she has logged off the exam. And they'll say, no, she hasn't. We need to inquire what's happening. What we're getting in that regard is things like bathroom breaks, not advised. That is, if staying there as long as you can during the exam, but if it's really an urgency thing, you really need to communicate through the chat window with your proctor. Your chat window is going to be only open between you and the proctor, not the other candidates. Dr. Turner asked this question, is the practice exam also 4 hours and 15 minutes? No. The practice exam, it's something you should easily be able to finish in an hour. But I'm not even sure that it's timed. I don't think it is. I'll check on that. But yeah, you can log on. But the point is you can log on and off to it as many times as you want. Anyway, so you can log off and back onto it 10 minutes later if you want to. Okay. So let's get back to early on. Each session of the CCAP exam is timed. And you'll see a timer on the page that lets you know how much time is left. This is another instance where you don't have to worry about logging off for your answers to be saved. You still need to log off. But if the time runs out while you're still on the exam, we have programmed the program to upload your questions as far as you've gotten to that point. It's very, very rare that someone doesn't finish the whole exam. Extremely rare. Okay. Now, Holly Pepinu asked, is our proctor watching us through the camera the whole time or just monitoring what we are doing on note? The proctor is, we don't have that functionality for the proctor to watch your keystrokes, to watch what you're doing on your computer. The proctor is only observing you sitting at your computer. The camera is focused on you doing that. And you're going to see that we're going to ask you to practice doing that with the proctor so that you become comfortable with that process. But I'm going to get to that in just a couple of minutes. Okay. The landing page on the day of the exam. Another question about the practice exam. No, we are not expected or required to do practice exam, any part of it. You're just required to access it. It's up to that. You feel comfortable, you navigate it, look at, this is fine with me. We just need to know that your computer logged on to the Moodle website and you're going to use that computer. You're not required or expected to do any of that practice if you're very comfortable, but you are required to log on to it. Okay? Clicking on the examination on test date. It's going to look just like when you clicked on for the practice exam, except you're going to click obviously on the exam. You're going to get a similar landing page, and it's going to show you 2 links. The CCAP exam objective questions, which you must access first, right? If we'll know if you didn't. We'll know if you did it the other way around. And second is to access the CCAP exam essay questions, okay? The first exam lasts an hour and 45 minutes. We have tested that over the years, and that's approximately how much time is a fair amount of time to answer the 40 questions that are on the exam. They are all objective questions. But we give a longer time for the essay questions, even though you'll see that they are not valued as many points overall as the objective questions, although because it gives time for people to think about and give a measured response. So you get 2.5 hours to do that. Now, it's a little different this year. You are expected to answer 4 of the essay questions, excuse me, that appear on the exam. My apologies for this. I have what's called cough variant asthma. I need continually to hydrate. There are 5 essay questions on the exam. You are required to answer 4 of the 5 and no more than 4. You'll be required to answer questions 1 and 2. By the way, this will be very clear when you open the exam. It tells you the exact same thing when you're in the questions. And then there are 3 more questions that appear, and you're asked to choose any 2 of the next 3 questions that appear. Don't think that if you answer all 5 of them, that it's going to give you an enhanced score. It won't. You will only be scored for the first 2 that you answered. So it's got to be the 2 that you chose. So don't think that adding another one is going to help you score. It's not. It's only 4 that are to be answered. Okay? Now, before the exam, remember to go to the practice exam a number of times if you want, then register for your virtual site after receiving a list of options just at the end of April, by the end of April, that will come from my email address, ccapcontact@aol.com. That will give you the information of all the options for those proctored virtual sites. And that will give you the option to register for the exam. Before that, before you get that list of the virtual sites, quite a bit before that, you will have received a copy of the examination regulations and a copy of the new HOPE case description. You want to read that and take a look at that, because you're going to need to sign the bottom page of the exam regulations and send that back to me by no later than June 1st. That'll be very clear in the exam regulations that you familiarize themselves. And by the way, everything I've said is going to be repeated on those exam regulations, okay? Familiarize yourself with the new HOPE case study right away. Imagine its good points, its weak points, Look at it and think of current challenges that you think are going on in community action, and think about how well is New Hope equipped for this. What do you think this board and you might have to deal with, and how would you address challenges that come your way? The question will look much like what you saw in the practice exam. Well, much like in the sense that it's that kind challenge. Deal with an issue. Now, then contact the host at your chosen virtual site to arrange for a practice session using the virtual site's meeting program. So, more about that. You will receive an invitation after you've made your choice of which program you're going to use. You're going to use GoToMeeting or Zoom, and at which time frame, 9 a.m. Eastern, or 10 a.m. Eastern, or 11 a.m. Eastern, and by what? GoToMeeting or Zoom? By far, most frequently Zoom, but some in public agencies have to use GoToMeeting. By the way, people book that, and it's first come, first served on those time slots. So right after you've received an invitation, right after you've indicated who your host proctor will be, when you've seen a list from me, you'll get an invitation from the host proctor to connect with them. And then with them, they know to use the same process to access the practice exam with them. Use the internet connection and the internet service provider that you will be using on exam day. Do the practice exam session with them from the same room you're going to take the exam on exam day. And while you're doing it, have your cell phone ready. You will know the proctor's cell phone number so that you can contact them if there's any kind of connection problem on your cell phone and talk that through. What we are doing is simulating the exam day experience now, where while you're on that Zoom or GoToMeeting website, you're opening up a second window to access the CCAP practice exam on Moodle. Here's why this is important. Because any issues you might have with the connection are to be resolved before exam day. There is no option to appeal exam scores for candidates whose connection to the Moodle site fails. That is to say, if it's on your end, if it's your computer, etc., unless it is a problem with the Moodle server on the Moodle end. Failure to maintain connection to virtual sites is addressed in the regs. And you'll see a little bit more about the details of that. Okay? Okay. Day of the exam. Log on to your virtual site at the appointed time, whatever that is, 9, 10, or 11. Remember, it says Eastern Daylight Time, so connect it to what your own time zone will be. Host proctors have been informed they may wait no longer than 15 minutes before they begin the session. You must use your quotes, certified laptop or other computer, the one that we answered before, the one you use on exam day, the one you used when you did your practice. You must be alone in the room, cell phone must be turned off, and all those items we said before must be adhered to what's on your desk. You may use a notepad. You may use a calculator for any formulating responses that you want. But at the end of that, if you use a notepad, you must completely tear up your notes and discard those destroyed pages in view of your computer camera. This is a classic exam security measure. You had access to privileged information on that exam day. Okay? Other concerns, see exam regulations and any ADA issues that you might have that require special attention. We will address them. Okay. That's what we wanted to cover in this presentation today. And again, these pages will be available to you This Zoom meeting has been recorded and will be available to you. And that's my contact, ccapcontact@aol.com. If you have other questions only about the exam, that's the only thing to send to me. Other things go to Mitzi at the partnership. But if it's about the exam process, you can connect with me about that. Like if you're having trouble on the virtual, on the practice exam, but also be monitoring what you put in the question number 11 on the practice exam. So I'll be there. My job is to make sure that you are as well prepared as you can be for the exam, particularly in terms of the functionality of online exam taking. This may be a piece of cake for most of you. For those of you who are new to this, we want you to feel just as comfortable for those people who are eating cake. Okay? Okay, we have the question. Do you know approximately when will be notified if we qualify to sit for the exam? Yes, it is pretty clear that you will be notified, though I really defer to Mitzi on this because it really depends on the whole process of the people who are the evaluators, who are teamed to read your portfolio. If the calculations of scores has been accomplished and there's agreement between the evaluators on their scores and any auditing that needs to be done, it is a labor-intensive project that should be done by the end of this month. And our expectation is that you will know no later than April 4th and probably, most likely, earlier than that. Okay. I got a question from Oklahoma. What sort of pass-fail percentage has the partnership experienced in the past? I have done every CCAP exam since 1993. I have worked with the commission since then. I've been with the founding of CCAP. The pass-fail rate for the CCAP exam rate has always hovered near 90% pass. It's in that realm. By far, the highest percentage of people pass the exam. And for those 10 or maybe a little bit more who don't pass the exam, remember that it's 3 years to go through the exam. And that's a 30-year history of that, almost 30-year history of that happening. So if someone doesn't pass the exam, those persons will have the opportunity to take an exam the following year, okay? There's a very high percentage of pass rate. Now, here's another thing we've learned. That small percentage that doesn't pass the exam is most frequently people who've not participated regularly in study groups. That doesn't mean if you don't participate in study group, you're going to fail the exam. It just means that that's a higher percentage among people who don't work together to prepare for the exam. That's something we have learned over the years. Another thing we've learned over the years is that the experience of preparing for the exam in those study groups leads to a kind of shared sense of camaraderie among the participants, and the learning experience of working together, preparing for the exam, turns to be almost as valuable as the high you have walking across the stage on the day in which you get that certificate. It's a wonderful experience to go through that learning. So those readings that you have, they're valuable stuff. They cover a lot about what you need to know about community action. Cherish this opportunity to pull that all together in one study period. Don't think of this as cramming for exam. Think of this as deeply digging into the professional that you are and feeling really good about, what community action is about. That's where you want to go, preparing for the exam. When you take that approach, it's going to feel a lot different when you take the exam. Yeah, most people I'd say, oh, damn, that was hard. You're right. It was tough. but it's designed to be tough. It's designed for everyone taking it to have to think. But if you're prepared, you know you're going to have a good chance you're going to come out of this feeling. No, you're going to come out of feeling, well, that was hard. I guarantee that. It's going to feel hard. But you're going to find out, well, I made it. And I'm going to be proud of the fact that I made it. Okay? Thank you all very much. We have only a few minutes left. No, somebody is happy in Oklahoma about that. I see that whoop whoop. Anyone else have some more that you want to mention in? Oh, I see. I didn't answer one from Willie Solderholm. Could there be more than one answer to the objective questions? There, almost always, the program will tell you if you have to select only one answer or more. It's not frequent. In almost all instances, but not quite all, when there are options of choices, it's an option where you have to think about in the drop-down menu, yeah, that one's correct, no, that one's not. So it gives you that, it's more thought-provoking than, yes, there's only one answer, okay? I think I got to all the questions. If there's anyone who didn't get their question answered that was in there, just unmute yourself and yell at me. Well, no one's yelling at me, so I guess we're okay. Oh, nope, I saw a couple new messages. There's thank yous. Okay. Okay, everyone, good luck on the exam. It will be an absolute delight to hear of you becoming a part of that group of community action professionals that their peers recognize on a national scale are really certified in their professional knowledge. Thank you.